you can get different answers to the same question, all in how that question is answered or asked, right? Like how you word the question and how you're open to an answer can absolutely dictate the response you get. And so learning to ask more creative, open-ended questions, asking questions in a way that truly gets to the heart of what you want to know makes a huge difference.
Welcome to Own the Room, for people operating where the stakes are real.
Pitches, negotiations, leadership conversations that don't come with a second chance.
Here, you'll learn to control perception, read the room, and thrive in high-stakes communication. Now here's Jake Stahl, who's going to help you turn communication
into your unfair advantage.
I am thrilled to have as a guest today a man who is an expert in curiosity-driven leadership. Now, don't think of him as a typical operations professional. He puts curiosity to work in launching, managing, and improving operations for venture-backed startups to global nonprofits with a lot of impact. He is also the best-selling author of The Curious Leader, Unlocking Innovations, Empowering Teams, and Driving Change. God, do we have a lot to talk about. Jon Bassford, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Jake.
Yeah, my pleasure. So, Jon, let's just start off. I coach people in the arena of business development, but I have to admit there are some people that just struggle with being curious, with asking questions that are good questions, and just, Jon, do you have people that just aren't curious by nature and you're helping them get to the curious side? Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So for me, it's always been natural to me. I am that young, inquisitive, we'll even say pain in the ass kid who was told his entire life, you're going to be a lawyer one day, or you should go to law school. I had that inquisitive, argumentative nature in that pushback as a kid is seen as disruptive. But when you carry that forward into adult life and professional life, it became a great tool for me because I was able to quickly challenge. And by challenge, I don't mean insubordination, unprofessional, but question what I'm being told and why I'm being told to do it when it doesn't seem to be the right way to do it. But you're absolutely correct that not everyone has that innate curiosity where they're willing to do that. And I think it stems from a couple of reasons. Sometimes it's just flat out ego. To be curious and to ask questions, it requires you to have the mentality that I don't know everything. And so a lot of people don't want to ask questions or don't want to point out they don't understand something, or because they don't want to make it seem like they don't already know. And so that's a big piece of it, right? And the other aspect is, as human beings, we are creatures of habit, comfort, and fear. And although these are natural components in how we're hardwired as human beings and have helped us survive evolution in the caveman eras, when it comes to innovation, growth, and change, they're absolutely the enemy. And so you have to create these mechanisms, to create a separate mindset, how you operate, how you manage your team, so that you allow this curiosity to flow a little more organically, if not naturally.
So, Jon, let's talk about that a little bit, because I have business professionals all the time that could really, really use like a shot in the arm for curiosity. As a matter of fact, I find myself sometimes saying, how do you not want to know that? But they're like, I don't think of those questions to ask. So are there any things we can do if we're not naturally curious, or maybe just have never been taught how to be more inquisitive? Is there anything we can do to kind of improve that skill?
Yeah, so here's one thing that changes our leadership mindset, brings in the culture component, is maybe learn to not put the pressure on yourself as much. And one of the tips that I give in creating a curious culture that allows to tap into your team a little more is, we all know what happens in a meeting, right? The leader, manager, CEO gets up there, says, this just happened in our company. Here's what I feel about it. Here's what we need to do. And then says, what are your thoughts? You just moved that entire room your direction. So if you're not naturally curious, you're not naturally one to look at things from different perspectives and to analyze things differently, don't put that pressure on you. the biggest thing you can do is tap into your team. Have a talk about, first of all, telling them, I want you to speak before I give you my thoughts. And then
Oh,
tell them
okay.
why. You tell them why. Say, look, I know that you guys see things differently. Every person in this organization has a unique perspective in what we do, how we do it, and why it works or doesn't work. So I want to hear from you. This event just happened, this program launch just happened, whatever it is. I want your unvarnished insights and perspectives of what worked and didn't work. No one's going to be in trouble. Be unfiltered, but I want to hear from you first. When you set that up, you're going to get all kinds of ideas on how to look at this differently without you having to generate a single different perspective.
That's really cool. So what you're saying is you tap into somebody else's innate curiosity to help bring about maybe your own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you are being curious, right? You are saying, hey, look, I don't always have the best insights. I don't always have the best ideas. But what I do is I manage this team. So I'm still the manager. I'm still the CEO. You're not stepping down from that role. But what you're learning to do is to step away from the ego and say, I have to have all the ideas. I have to have all their perspectives. I have to be the one who finds the problems and solves the problems and bring new ideas. Instead, I'm going to reverse this. I'm going to tap into my team. I'm curious what they think. And when you let their curiosity fly as well, that's when things just really grow.
Wow, that's excellent insight. I like that a lot. I don't think I ever would have thought of that. So, Jon, what if you're kind of a force of one? All right, you're a solo professional and you realize that maybe when you're in a conversation with a prospect, you're just not asking great questions, or maybe it's a curiosity thing that you're just not curious enough about some areas. You don't know what you don't know. Is there things we can do as solo professionals to kind of upskill ourselves with curiosity?
Yeah, I'm going to throw out a buzzword, which I'm not usually one who throws this word out there, but use
Lay it
AI.
on us.
Use AI. Like
That's a great idea.
ChatGPT is an amazing tool. Like for people who aren't using this in their daily business, even as I'm a solopreneur, right? I have some consultants that work for me. It's predominantly me, my brand, my business, and I use ChatGPT every single day for a variety of different things. And one thing I've learned to do is just have fun with it. Sometimes you're like, hey, I have this idea. I want you to be supportive. Give me some thoughts on this. And there's other times I'm like, hey, what? I want you to be my harshest critic in the world and just really poke holes in every single thing here. If you use any kind of AI recording note-taking for your calls, before your next call, if you're a little worried about what to bring up, what to talk about, load up your last several calls and say, hey, where could I have gone a little deeper? What are some questions I need to ask to get to the right answer? Because one thing that has been vitally important to me in my operations career, you can get different answers to the same question, all in how that question is answered or asked, right? Like how you word the question and how you're open to an answer can absolutely dictate the response you get. And so learning to ask more creative, open-ended questions, asking questions in a way that truly gets to the heart of what you want to know makes a huge difference. And you can tap into ChatGPT or whatever AI tool is your favorite and really learn to go deeper.
That's a great idea because, discovery calls are huge for small businesses and for large businesses, right? On their front line, the people who are manning the phones, that's huge. So I could see the advantages of doing that. That's fantastic. So Jon, tell me a little bit about your evaluation when you go into a company. So you go into a company, the company just isn't curiosity driven. There's crap pushed from the top down and you either follow the flow or you get the hell out. So Jon, what do you do when you first go into a company to do an evaluation on how do you get started?
Yeah, my career has been in operations. My consulting company started with me launching operations for some startups, both for-profit and nonprofit, then staying on as a fractional COO. And then I started working for interim COO roles, et cetera. But there tended to be some themes, right? They started noticing the efficiency of their internal operations breaking down, the culture breaks down, the leadership has a control, micromanagement mindset and how they're doing things, which also breaks down the efficiency and effectiveness of operations. And when I switched my business, I changed to more of this audit assessment way of approaching this to go in quicker.
Right.
Instead of working there for 6, 12, 18 months and discovering these issues little over little, I go in much quicker. And so we're looking at decision-making alignment, right? We're looking at the capacity for change amongst your entire team. We're looking at the strength and maturity of your entire operations. We're looking at everything from your marketing and sales positioning to your governance and HR practices to find those gaps and holes that are holding you back. Something you said earlier was a lot of CEOs just don't know what they don't know. And that's something I hear all the time is I know what I know. I don't know what I don't know. I know something's wrong. I just don't know what it is. These are some of the things that I hear constantly. But it also is that organization who's, you know what, things have been good, but we want to go to the next level. What are the gaps and holes that we're missing to make that happen? And really all of this about everything that we do is about helping the leaders and everyone in the organization trust the process, right? There's processes that we go through to run our businesses to make sure they're streamlined, they're efficient, they're effective, and they achieve what I call operational excellence, which is defined as the ability for an organization to achieve its intended results as efficiently and effectively as possible. That's our goal as leaders, right? Is to have operational excellence. And so what our assessment does is go in and find those gaps and holes from an objective standpoint. A lot of organizations, consulting companies that have audits or assessments, they're giving you an assessment to sell you a product they already know they're going to sell you.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Let me find the problem that I can solve.
So your fractional COO replacement company is auditing your business to find that missing piece, your fractional COO.
Right.
Your software company is finding that missing piece, which is always going to be software. We do it objectively. We're looking at all these different areas, and because myself and the other consultants who work for me, we're all operational background. We've overseen all these different areas cross-departmentally. We've driven change. We've helped leadership and coaching. So we're finding these gaps and holes, creating a plan to fix those, and then staying with you for a little while as we work on the mindset, the culture, and execution of that.
That's really cool. And Jon, I was looking through the talks that you give, and you give some really impressive talks. I noticed you're a TEDx speaker, which is also remarkably impressive. So congratulations on that. So Jon, what would you say to somebody who's afraid of change? And let me provide context around this. We have solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, small business owners that are like, I know something's got to give, and I know something needs to be changed, but there's a certain terror in change, right? Is the pain I'm going to encounter worse than the pain I'm encountering right now? How do you talk with people about adapting to a change that's necessary?
Yeah, I think for me and how I approach this, and as I talk about in a lot of the podcasts in my book and everything, is first, I think it's important to be able to recognize that fear is natural, right? I think that's one of the biggest things we can do as consultants, influencers, et cetera, is let people know that's natural, right? Which is one reason why I'm not a big fan of a lot of influencers who are out there who lead with the term loser, right? You're a loser if you're not doing X, Y, and Z. I'm like we all have our doubts and self-doubts and limitations, even you, Grant.
Daily.
Yeah, right? So it's natural to have these fears. And I think that's one of the most important things to understand. But then we start going a little deeper, right? We understand where that fear comes from. Again, I'm not someone who I would say is an expert in psychoanalysis or anything like that, but you start understanding a little bit from people, right? Like where this fear comes from and whether it's a control issue, whether it's a money issue, but we start understanding a little bit where that comes from. And one of the biggest tools in my toolbox that I use is reminding people over and over again, usually that you already know this isn't working. Right? You already know this isn't working. And we'll throw out the cliche statement of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. We'll throw that out there. So if we already know this isn't working and we cannot stay this course, if we stay this course, the business is going to close a year, 5 years, 10 years, whatever it may be. We're not going to hit the marks we want to hit. There is no risk. Like we will do this in a logical, sound way that we'll test some things. We'll move forward with some things. If we see this isn't working, we'll go back. Most people think that to grow an organization, to improve, to change, requires these massive changing our mission, capital investment. I have
Everything's
changed.
different.
I think we overemphasize change as this big, huge thing. I have literally changed an organization by taking a document that was in the back of a manual, making its own document, and building an entire communication strategy around it. Not a single
Wow.
thing was spent. Not a single dollar was spent on this, right? It was all taking something that already exists, making it slightly better, and using that as the tool to drive change. And the organization saw a 20% increase in revenue, 500% increase in programming, record-breaking attendance at their events, because we made this one little change, that we brought this document out, made it put in the forefront, and made it accessible, and used it instead of burying it in the back when it was the lifeblood of the entire organization. But it just, people get stuck. They get stuck in how they do things, and these little bitty changes can go a very long way.
Well, they always say when you're too far inside the jar, it's hard to read the label anymore. So, John, what are your philosophies on things like you said earlier? You said it doesn't have to be a massive change. So, what are your thoughts on gaining small victories along the way? So, the changes can be actually a chain of smaller changes where you're conditioning yourself to see each victory as more of an impetus to change.
Yeah, because here's another thing for small changes I think are often missed from founders, CEOs, solopreneurs, is they tend to invest in the outward components, the products, the marketing, the sales, which oftentimes is the zone of genius for that founder or CEO. What they don't touch is the internal operations. And what
Right.
always happens is they get pulled into it. Working with a founder and CEO who built a great product, it was getting investments, teams on 2 continents, and he had his hands in everything. And the processes were a mess. The entire leadership team was spending 10 to 15 hours a week on accounting processes for no reason other than there wasn't a process. So
Right.
it took me a while. Like, it took me 4 months to get through to the CEO. There's some simple changes to make. And what he kept going back to was, but I don't want to pay wire transfer fees. I was like, that's the cost of doing business when you hire internationally. Let it go, buddy. I'm going
Let it
to
go.
save you and your leadership team 15 hours a week. And I bring up this story to say, like, these internal operation pieces are usually not on a CEO's radar.
Right.
But when I can give you back 5, 10, 15 hours a week by improving these processes over here that you have no business being a part of, and you put that time and effort on the marketing, the sales, the product development, whatever it is your zone of genius, the outward facing stuff, the stuff that truly drives the growth in revenue, how much would that impact your business? Again, we're talking about a small fact process of your business, your accounting processes, to give you back 5 to 10 hours a week while also trusting it better, going back to trust the process, so that you can invest over here. Like, those are the type of things that really move the needle, as opposed to developing a custom software system that's going to bridge our accounting, HR, blah, blah. A buddy of mine, speak of that real quick, a buddy of mine came to me and said, hey, we just launched, I won't give the name, this enterprise accounting system.
Right.
It's like, it's so great. Like, bills come into this and it automatically populates this in our accounting. So we're not manually entering this stuff. I was like, I've been using software that does that for 12 years. Like, this is, it costs $100 a month versus your $100,000 build. He literally said, you're shitting me. I was like, no, like, this is not new technology. You're using an enterprise system that you could have gotten for $1,200 a year. Like, again, so these little changes don't require, you can go the massive enterprise build, but these little changes exist if we just tap into something, start thinking about what's working, what's not working, work with the right partner, not like someone like me who is not full-time. I'm going to come in, I'm going to help you change things, find these holes and get out, and let your team do that. So those are the little tweaks and changes that can go a long way.
I couldn't agree with you more. And it's kind of funny because, I talk with people all the time and I have corporate and personal clients. And one of the things I hear all the time is that they're chasing the things that they know they can succeed at and that they're happy with, and they know they can push change. But it's the other stuff that tends to get set aside that they don't know about. And I'm a huge advocate for hiring consultants, not because I am one, but because it takes an outside set of eyes to take a look. But John, let's say we have somebody who may not be able to hire that outside person. Is there any like hints or tips and tricks to look at what you're doing and just kind of pick up on some of the things that maybe need more of your attention?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. The first thing is asking yourself, where do things get stuck? Like where do things get stuck? I think that's always process mapping, right? Like where does, whether I'm a solopreneur or I got a small team, where do things get stuck? And 9 times out of 10, it's likely going to be you, right? There is an issue with you in the process
Yeah.
mode where
Yeah.
things get stuck. And again,
Sure.
maybe, and again, I realize that we're talking about someone who can't necessarily hire a higher end consultant, but there's all kinds of outsource help you can get, right?
Gotcha.
If you
Yep.
find yourself spending 5-10 hours a week on these administrative tasks, look at a VA that are very low cost. So there are some things like that, but start mapping out where those gaps and holes, where the roadblocks are, and trying to fix them yourself if you can. And then also be looking at, for small business owner and solopreneur, the biggest ways to get burned out is doing things that don't move the needle,
Yeah.
doing things that you don't want to do, and doing things that are completely below your pay grade.
And there's a lot of those.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mean this to insult CEOs and founders, but I say this to them a lot. You're a bookkeeper. Yes, you're absolutely also the CEO, but you're also the bookkeeper. And
Yeah.
you're the administrative assistant, and you're the CFO who has no financial knowledge, right? Like you have all
Yeah.
of these things that you're doing that you
Yep.
shouldn't be doing. So let's find those areas. Let's get, if we need that low cost fractional support, let's do that. If we need the higher end consultant to help fix things. And again, part of the struggle I had early on in my career in wanting to help founders and CEOs make more efficient, effective operations is would get so frustrated. I'm like, I wish you would have found me a year and a half ago before you
Yes.
built all this, because
Yeah.
fixing the problems as quickly as possible or launching them as efficiently, effectively as possible to begin with saves you a lot of time and frustration down the road. And so
Yeah.
I'd say to these people, look at what it's costing you mentally, emotionally, physically to stay where you are. At some point, you have to bite the bullet, and that's probably a bad phrase to use, but
We say we're
yeah, but you gotta put, like, I gotta stop sitting where I'm sitting and not moving forward.
Yeah.
It's time to make a little bit of change here, a little bit of investment, because I'm gonna reap this tenfold by stepping out of this and to make things better and work better. And that's really the way to do it.
So, John, let me ask you a personal question, and you can definitely bow out if you don't want to answer this. But, you know, we all, as we're going through life and as we're forming our businesses, we get to those terrified moments. You know, it's the moment at 2 a.m. where you're sitting in the middle of your hallway going, what the hell am I doing? So how does John get by that? How do you coach people to get by those fear moments where you just need to break through to the other side so you can take action again?
Yeah, for me, and this is something I've worked on. I started working with an executive coach about 6 years ago, year or two into my consulting business to help me grow my business.
Right.
And what we ended up working on was me. But it led me down a journey through someone he had on his podcast. I was like, I got to talk to this young man, young Northwest entrepreneur, late 20s, multimillionaire. I'm like, I got to talk to this guy. He seemed to get the law of attraction and living with your goals already fulfilled in the moment now when they haven't been, those type of strategies. So I got to talk to this guy. And he told me to read, after hearing my story, my background, told me to read the book, A Soul Without Shame, which is, it really goes into the psychology and evolution of the superego, why it exists, why it no longer helps you, how to, I don't want to use the word combat, but like how to confront it and not let it be a hindrance. And I bring that all because this is something that I have dealt with my entire professional career. I've always been successful. I have a law degree, I have an MBA, COO of a national multi-million dollar organization at the age of 35. Like I've accomplished some real cool things, but I still had these moments of self-doubt.
Of
And when
course.
you go to entrepreneurship, it gets worse, right? Because everything is you. Like
It
you're not selling a
multiplies.
product, you're selling yourself over and over again. And when someone says no, they're saying no to you, right? So
Yeah.
I had to live and breathe this. And I've been through moments where I've overextended myself personally in investments and had some money problems and had multiple aspects of my business change at one time. And I say all this to get to a point to say, it always usually comes back to gratitude, right? And realizing for me, so the biggest moments were like, John, there's nothing in the world that could happen to you today that would end everything. Like you have enough money in the bank, you can sell your 401, cash out your 401k. There's nothing in the world. You are worrying about 6 to 12 months from now. That's usually our worry is usually about regret from the past or worry about the future or the lies we tell ourselves in the moment, right? I'm worthless. I'm this, I'm that.
Yeah.
I'm not worthless. Neither are they. Neither are you. So we have to come to that realization and truly take some time, doing deep breaths, learn to meditate, learn to center yourself, ground yourself, and just take those moments to truly see that 999 times out of 1,000, it's not a problem that we can't solve right then and there, that is going to hurt us, affect our life greatly right then and there. It's always about the worry about the future. So take confidence in that. Like wherever it is right now, it's okay. I can handle it today. I'll worry about tomorrow. And then and then take those moments once you're centered, grounded, and take those moments to say, I do believe myself. I'm struggling right now. It's okay to admit that, but I do know who I am. I know what I stand for. I know what I'm trying to do. And I do believe that. And I'm going to get myself back up tomorrow morning and go at this again and just find a different path.
So what you're saying, John, is I shouldn't stand in the center of the mall and say, shut up, brain, I'm okay after all. I should be a little bit more subtle than that.
Whatever you got to think to do. Like if that's what gets you to knock yourself out, right? We get stuck, we get trapped, and we got to find these ways to do it. And sometimes I'm probably a little more an internal processor and that type of stuff. And so I just got to sit it myself. I got to sit in the weight of it and remind myself who I am and what I believe.
Yeah.
And look, there's with me going through this journey in ebbs and flows of entrepreneurship, like there'd be times where I'd be in those lulls, those negativity moments for days or weeks.
Yeah.
But as I started these practices, like now that I'm at a point where like something might rock my world and I'm in it for 2 or 3 hours, but it's probably getting more. Nothing lasts more than an hour. Like I'm able to talk myself through it mentally. And as you learn to, the neuroplasticity talk of, you retrain yourself in these type of environments, you are rewiring your brain. So as time goes on, like I just find myself subconsciously, unconsciously, just taking a deep breath and letting it go through my body, just to take a moment of relaxation instead of just constantly being busy. Your body and your mind both begin to work differently as you learn how to recognize these voices in your head, recognize they're not true, talk yourself through them to what is really true, and work your way out of it.
Yeah, I've actually gotten in the habit of just using certain phrases. Like if I'm thinking about something in the future, I interrupt my patterns and I go, not actionable. It's just not actionable right now. And if I hear something in my head that's false, it's like, those are past memories of feeling real. That's a falsehood. And it's amazing how if you do that often enough, it really alters the way you think. 100%. So, John, let me ask you this. I love to ask my guests this who specialize in areas. What's one of the biggest myths that you hear that when you hear it, you go, oh, God, not this again? And what's the truth?
Something that's really been speaking to me lately is the notion of I'm not ready yet. Again, talking about someone wanting to start a new business, become an entrepreneur, become a consultant, whatever it may be, become a speaker. We always convince ourselves that there's some reason why I'm not ready yet. I have to achieve A, B, and C over here before I'm ready. And that's the biggest myth. The biggest thing in the world you could do to achieve those end results is to start now. And again, it doesn't mean you have to quit your job. It doesn't mean you have to big capital expenditures like we were talking about earlier. Like start in small ways. If you're working a W-2 and your dream is to be a consultant, start picking up some little thing on the side. Get on Upwork. There's all kinds of things that you can do to take initial steps now that are going to help you test this. See if you want to do this. See if what idea you have is sellable and marketable, and just start playing. I wish I started my career in an association where I was training a lot of leaders, and I wanted to be a public speaker, but I kept convincing myself I had to do X, Y, and Z before I had the notoriety. I had to have the book. I had to have the TEDx talk.
Lots of prerequisites.
Right. And although I did do some paid public speaking prior to those, I wish I would have gone all in much, much sooner and found a few niches, start marketing that, start at a very low cost for a public speaker, and just get the practice and build it from there instead of feeling like I had to reach this certain level of notoriety before anyone would pay me to speak at their audience.
I think that is sage advice. You know, we start off the New Year's each year saying what we're going to do different. And what we don't often do is say, this is not what I'm going to do anymore, which can be even more effective. So a New Year's resolution to me should be, I'm not going to delay any longer. So sometimes I agree with you. We need to talk about what we're not going to do anymore versus what we're going to do. So great. John, as we close up, let's talk a little bit about your book. Why don't you talk about your book's title, what's in the book, and why people should read it?
Yeah, The Curious Leader, Unlocking Innovation, Empowering Teams, and Driving Change. It's really, again, go back to our early conversation, curiosity has been innate for me, but I didn't pinpoint curiosity until a couple of years ago. I was in a career change and was looking deeper, like what's my purpose type stuff. And a colleague of mine introduced me to an academic whose specialty is helping people to define their superpower. And I was working with him and came back as curiosity. I'm like, okay, cool. Didn't rock my world at the moment, but fast forward a couple years after that, I was working with a branding company. And again, it's different context of conversation, different person, but curiosity came back again. And so when I really started thinking about my life, everything from my personality as a childhood to taking on opportunities, both in high school, college, going to grad school, moving from the Midwest to the East Coast for my career and where I wanted to set up my life, to my actual practices as a professional, I really could see the through line of curiosity through that. And once I tapped into that, started thinking about the frameworks that happen in me naturally, and then tapping into what I've seen and how organizations operate from a cultural standpoint, the book really wrote itself. And it's been absolutely amazing. Already in 2026, I have 3 speaking gigs booked, incorporating both my...
Congratulations.
So I've developed the Curious Leader into executive leadership workshop that's designed to be a little more intimate and personal with a leadership team or a small team. But I've had a lot of people ask me like, hey, we want you to speak for 2 or 3 hours. What can you do? I'm like, all right, I can do my keynote for 45. Then we can break out my workshop into a little more sizable bites for 200 person audience. And so it's been really fun to incorporate this executive leadership workshop with these conferences. And so my goal is to really empower leaders and organizations for change. And that's what my purpose is, using my skills and ability and experience to help drive that as much as possible.
Excellent. And John, if somebody wants to hire you, somebody wants to reach out, they want a keynote talk, they want to hear about your workshops, what's the best way to reach you?
Sure. I'll give you 2 quick sites here. My consulting company is Lateral Solutions. So you can go to think-lateral.com or go to jonbassford.com. Simple, Jon without an H, and bass like a fish, ford like a car.com. Those are the 2 best ways to reach me.
Fantastic. And we'll link those in the call notes, and we'll link the book on Amazon as well if people want to get the book. So Jon, thank you so much for taking the time today and talking about curiosity and change. Super great having you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for checking out Own the Room with Jake Stahl. If you've gotten value from this episode, share it with the solopreneur in your life who wants to know how to communicate to be seen, heard, and respected. Review and rate the show wherever you check out podcasts. And grab your copy of Own the Room, How to Communicate to be Seen, Heard, and Respected. We'll catch you next week on Own the Room.